Hey guys, so I was going to do the tea video today, but I went over to Scott's because I usually do the viewer questions video with Scott on Thursday, then show it on Friday, but it turned out really well and it turned out really long. So what I'm going to do is we'll probably do the tea thing next week. What we're going to do is we'll do 2 parts on the viewer questions because we got so many good viewer questions. So we got a good one today. Watch this with Scott and then tune in tomorrow for part 2 of viewer questions with Scott. I love you. And I'll see you tomorrow. But watch this. Watch the whole thing. The show's going to come up right now. Just hold on.
This is it.
This is it. We're doing it this
time.
time.
Not doing it anymore after this. Whatever this is, whether we hurt feelings or no matter how unpolitically correct we become.
Goes. All right. Hey there. Hey there, Bob from Oregon's Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCGFAM show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? Let me know in the comments. We'll talk about it. Ask some questions. Too late for this viewer questions because we're doing it right now. It's viewer questions with Scott. Scott, we got some viewer questions. James Snell says, hi, Bob and Scott. So, question about microbes and feeding, which was the topic yesterday. I don't do tea applications often because I'm just unfamiliar with making them, but I still add beneficials. I just do it after my feed mix has been pH'd. Am I wasting product and time? I'll get you into this other in a minute. So he's just he thinks tea's a tea and he's got to brew it up, but his beneficials, I'm assuming these are microbial products, he's doing them with his thing. Should he be doing it that way, or would it be better if he did a tea day but did it just with microbials?
Either way.
Not really a big deal.
I mean, if you do just a tea day, you're going to be focusing on just the tea and the microbes in the tea. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's, I look at my tea day as a feed day because you're putting life in to eat the things that didn't get eaten or absorbed by the plant. So by doing that to save some time, you're not doing that much harm. Mm-hmm. I mean, microbial spores are a little bit sensitive to high phosphorus levels. They're, really hot nitrates, none of which are really our nutrient line. So as long as you brew our solution, pH it, then add your microbes, you're fine to do that. Mm-hmm. You do, I think, get more bang for your buck if you do it on the tea day.
So the feed flush, the idea is I'm feeding. My tea day is breaking down some of that and some in the next 2 feed days, and then my flush is fixing, resetting.
Eat the excess and charge the soil for the next 2, mm-hmm. and then the next 2 are just feeding. So SLF, that's a little bit different in the realm where you would want to add that in because it's eating the calcium and the phosphorus all the time.
Well, that's his next question is, how is SLF different from other microbial products?
Well, it's an enzyme. Mm-hmm. So, it's a microbial created enzyme. So by putting them in, you're putting in an enzyme, which we don't have in the line. So mm-hmm. there's your enzyme. Mm-hmm. And then having that life form in there as that's being put into the solution, it won't hurt a thing.
So that you would do every time if you can justify it cost-wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the microbials, other beneficials like a microbe life or a cultured tea or something like that, you would recommend doing a tea day.
Well, you might as well save it for a tea day.
Sure.
You can add it to the nutrient day, but just feed them. That's your job today is 2 feeds in a row.
Sure. And
then you use the tea to balance everything out. So mm-hmm. I just stretch it out by doing all the microbes on the 3rd watering.
Okay. So Run Boy 7426 got a question. He's had lots of questions. He's a big commenter frequently. How's it going, man?
Either that or you really should buy a book. Just kidding.
That's not very nice.
We like Run Boy's questions. That's just how we
You're just a little salty today. That's why we're on the 4th take, actually.
The first 3 takes were me attacking Bob. So there's that. Read Boy, you just happen to get the
read
a
book
one.
So, hey, Bob. Yesterday, you and Scott talked about the frequency of feeding and waterings being better than a large volume at one time. So doing, small ones and then let it dry out. So this brings up the question, how long after you mix up nectar soup can it be kept in your reservoir? Maybe a few days if you keep it circulating with a small water pump. So I guess he's probably talking about he does some sort of quasi-hydro kind of situation there.
Or he just has a 50-gallon reservoir and he wants to mix it a few times a week.
Uh-huh. So no.
Ideally, no. So with our line, it's that calcium reaction that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. So once you add the calcium in with the other elements and components of the line, they start to create bonds and they start to create compounds. And what happens when you have a compound is you go back to organic meals, meaning slow organics. You put them in the soil. They need to be broken down before they become available to the plant to consume or absorb. So the longer those things sit in a reservoir, the less available it is to the plant at the time of watering. Now, with that being said, the first time you mix and feed, your plants are going to respond. The rest is going to go into the soil, create bonds with the cocoa, the peat, whatever, compost, worm castings, whatever you have. The living organisms will start breaking that down over the next day or two, and then you come back with another feed. Well, your second feed will have already been locked up in the solution because it's been sitting in the reservoir so long. It's still viable to the microbial field. You're still feeding the microbes. It's just like taking, dry amendments and top dressing with them and then having your microbes break them down again. So if you really want to see fast growth, fast response, more production, mix the day you want to feed. If you're just running on autopilot and you're doing a lot of compost teas and microbials, then you can pre-mix for 4 to 5 days at a time. And the first one will be the active plant feed, and the next 4 days will be microbial foods.
What about the pH when you're doing something like that?
pH is going to climb on you because the downfall of not the downfall at all, but the design of Olympus Up is that when we put it in, it's about 85% soluble in the Olympus Up concentrate. And the 15% is still in rock form. When you put that into solution with all these organic acids in the Herc, the Gaia, the Afro, all these different products, that 15% is going to continuously break down, slowly releasing the pH adjuster up. So when you start at 6.3, you're going to end up at 7.4. So you're going to always want to recheck your pH right before you water and feed. If it's too high, drop it with some Herculean, because then you're putting in free forms of calcium, or just Hades down, or any type of phosphoric acid pH down.
Okay. Gary Murdoch.
Your pH. It will go up, I guarantee it.
Okay. Christmas special. We got to think about that. Gary Murdoch said. Gary Murdoch says, "Hey, Big Bob, question for you." Big Bob, I like that.
Hey,
I'm looking
Big
for a nickname.
Bob.
I'm looking for a nickname.
I got a few for you.
Well, Booger
couple that your mom will like, couple your mom won't.
I've been having issues with my RH, relative humidity, in the low 30s.
Ouch.
I also noticed that my plants are not soaking up feed from the number 4 soil.
No, they're locked out.
So like they were, does the lower relative humidity affect the uptake of my feedings? Oh, hell yeah. So talk about that. So what's the deal with humidity and the uptake of the plant?
Well, that's where I had this printed out, because this is the... boy, now I'm drawing a blank on the VRP.
Yeah. I have a whole video about this that we did with Santo. Vapor pressure.
The vapor pressure density, VPD.
Deficit.
Deficit. Yeah, thank you. Brain head injury. Regardless, there's this great chart. Bob will load it up somewhere in the comments below.
Nice. Well, I'll actually have to do it in the community tab.
On the community, up
tab.
there in the categories. Anyway.
Right.
But this here is going to show you where your humidity, your temp, and the perfect vein of absorption and plant response to your temperature and your humidity.
So
you are like at 30, your plants... you're in the desert, virtually.
There's no temperature that's going to work to get that to go, right?
55.
Yeah.
At 55, your roots stop really absorbing regardless. So you're really going to want to put either a humidifier in there or, a couple buckets of water in the room with just a little tiny fan next to it just to get some humidity in there. Foliar feeding will be your best friend. Because if you can start foliar feeding, forcing the stomata to start opening, right now your plants are shutting down, holding on to the moisture they have because of that low of humidity. They're going to want to sweat it.
They don't expect any water because they're thinking they're outside. There's no water coming anytime soon, so they're hanging on to it.
Yeah. So ideally, research VPD. That's going to be a huge piece to you. You probably will want to either have some type of humidity maker or a water source in the space to create humidity. In Oregon, we're at 90%, 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So we have the other issue. We dehumidify, but down in Southwest, Texas, Arizona, that's where yucca is your best friend. That's the other thing, is if you start using Hygeia, that would help.
How so?
Well, you're holding the nutrition into the soil a little bit longer, and it keeps that soil a little bit moister longer, and they can access the food longer. But still, you need to open up the stomata. You need to get the plants active on the surface. At 30, that's going to be tough.
So it's certainly affecting my soil, and everything is getting affected by the super low humidity.
Yeah, indoors it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
So add humidity, but look up VPD and then kind of look at that. I mean, the lowest you're going to be able to go is like 63 degrees at a 45%, and you're going to be able to get some uptake.
So if you can get it by a bucket and a fan, that's just as good as a humidifier, right? Or would you?
Well, yeah,
but would you get a humidifier so you can kind of control it more?
I mean, I like the control and being at that 50 to 55%, but if that's out of the question in your budget, then a fan or just a bunch of buckets of water will create humidity. So,
okay.
Yeah, I could go way. I mean, I would research more with.
Well, I'll put a link to the video. Santo went into this like an hour video we have of him talking about it. It's a deep subject.
I'll tell you how to work calcium, but I'm going to let Santo work on the humidity issues.
Probably time to get Santo on the show again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week, so I don't have to.
It's a good idea. We'll do your question.
Hey, Santo.
So this one is from Clips. I'm not sure how to say it. Hey, Scott, my question is about slurry ppm. When you take your slurry to see if the plants ate the food you fed them, do you give it a day or two and then see? Example, I feed today, I will wait till they need water again and check the slurry. Where should I grab the soil from? The middle of the pot, top or sides, maybe an inch or so down. We got a whole video about this, but maybe you can, and I'll put a link to that too. But
so this video's got a lot of links below.
A lot of links below. I'm going to have to start writing them down.
Just don't go to the one that says bikini dots. It's not a good one. That's Bob's personal thing. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so slurry,
How wet?
Check before you go to the next feed.
Okay. So obviously you want the soil a little damp, so you got something to work with. Not damp, but not
bone dry.
Not bone dry.
If it's hydrophobic, you're not going to get anything. But ideally, you're feeding and watering at a rate that they're keeping at least a 25% moisture rate in the soil.
But you wouldn't do it right after you feed. You want it to eat that up and see where you're at.
Give them a day or two. So once they are about ready to feed again, that's when you test. Ideally, mid to outside container. That's where most of that feeder here is going to be. No deeper than 3 inches, under an inch, so between 2 and 3 inches.
Okay.
We like 1-to-1, so if you're giving us the information, we do 1-to-1. Some labs do 2-to-1. So it really depends on who's working with you and how they want the information conveyed. Everything we're going to ask you for is a 1-by-1. So, but yeah, middle to side, 2 to 3 inches, the day before you're going to feed.
Okay. We're really rolling through them. We're doing good.
Not very entertaining, but...
Pipe North said, doing a few auto runs. Would be helpful to hear some Q&A on using nectar for autos. Thanks for the show, gents.
I'm going to have to find somebody that does autos that can fill in. There's some guys online that are doing autos. I'll get some names from the Facebook groups because they're killing it with it. But there is, what most of these guys have told me is they start the feeding, same exact feeding schedule. They know from their breeder what the actual dates are.
Okay,
so they break that stuff up into your veg and your bloom cycles and then start at half strength and slowly increase them. Because the other thing with autos is that they're all crossbred with stuff.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have different variances between 6, 8, and 10 weeks. You're going to have a variance on how much they're going to eat, how much we don't have a recipe for autos.
Well, let me ask you this. Is the only issue that you don't know when it's going to flip because you're not manually flipping it yourself, or are there other things with autos that you would be concerned about?
They eat differently because they switch fat. I mean, a lot of guys will keep their plants in veg until they're 3 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
And then they flip them. So we're talking a root ball in a 10-gallon pot is going to eat considerably more than a root ball in a 2-gallon pot.
Okay.
And this one is going to need more nutrition, like more nitrogen, more amino acids, more calcium to make those cells on a huge plant, where this one probably doesn't need nearly the feed load. So we get a lot of people say they never even reach half strength of the Greek with an auto because it's just too much for their growth pattern.
I gotcha.
So it's really, the genetics play a huge part in this question. I always recommend just starting everything at half strength and maintaining that. Once you start to see any type of signs of hunger, then bumping it up a little and just slowly increasing it. But I doubt you'll get to full strength with an auto on a regular 8-week strain.
Are you going to find any difference in how you navigate based on your slurries?
Well, of course. I mean, slurries are always going to, it doesn't matter what you're growing.
It's the same as it ever was with that.
Oh, yeah,
as far as
if
judging
you're giving them 1,200 and they're at 800 in there, they're not eating what you're giving them. So clean that out and start lower. But, you know, this would probably be the one time I would encourage mapping, documenting your ppms and your pH for your inputs just to watch.
The whole way through.
Because if you don't have a reference from crop to crop to crop, you don't know what you're doing.
And you would say more so with this that repeating the same thing over and over again and figuring out how it works would be helpful to know what's going on with it, as opposed to where with maybe growing some regular stuff, you can figure it out on your
I think the bigger the plan is, the more forgiving it can be. So you can do a lot more manipulation and a lot more torture, and it definitely pops back. Autos, I mean, once they go, they go. So it's literally you are on a ticking clock. You have X amount of time to get your job done. So it's you figuring out where you're going to spike the most food, when you're going to put on the most weight, when you're going to do the most production, and then tapering it down for the flush. But most people are doing this at half strength on the recipe. Some get up to 3/4 strength and do just fine. Like I said, I'll look up through the OCGFAM groups to see who's doing autoflowers and get some input. But a lot of people are doing autoflowers with it, so it's not necessarily...
It works, it's just that it's...
You just have to dial it in, and we don't have a feeding schedule for it. We'd love to have the auto guys create feeding schedules for nectar for them, so... For that, auto guys, create a feeding schedule.
There you go.
There might be a t-shirt on it for you.
For more information about anything on today's show, go to our website, OCGFAM.com. And if you buy anything while you're there, I have been informed by Amy that we can no longer use the code FAMHARVEST. We got to switch to the code FAM20. She didn't tell me why, but that's just how it is, FAM20. That's the code. Save 20% on everything at OCGFAM.com. The OCGFAM show, it's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCGFAM show. See you tomorrow.